Welcome to another deep dive where we unpack some really interesting source material for you.
Yeah.
Today we're diving into an interview with Christian Hirschbeck. He's the CEO of SEBERS Medical, and we're focusing on his journey and the vision behind their Blossom TMS device.
That's right. And we've got just one core source for this deep dive today. It's an interview transcript.
Okay.
It gives us a pretty direct line into Christian Hirschbeck's background, the thinking behind Blossom TMS, what makes it different, and crucially, where he thinks the whole technology is headed.
Right. So our mission really is to pull out those key insights. What was the motivation? Why Blossom TMS?
Yeah, what makes it tick?
Exactly. What problems is it trying to solve? And maybe what does its development tell us about where TMS technology is going generally? Okay, let's unpack this interview.
So first off, Christian Hirschbeck's connection to TMS, Transcranial Magnetic Stimulation. It actually goes back quite a ways, over 15 years, according to the source.
Oh, okay. 15 years. So he wasn't like a TMS native from the start. He came in from somewhere else.
Exactly. He first bumped into it while he was working for a neurophysiology company.
Neurophysiology.
Yeah.
Like EEG and that kind of thing.
Precisely. His initial contact came through a joint venture his company had going with an early TMS startup.
Oh, okay.
At the time, his focus was actually product development for EEG solutions,
Right.
Measuring brainwaves.
Right.
And this partnership kind of led them to explore how you might combine EEG and also EMG, which looks at muscle responses, combine those with TMS.
Huh. That's interesting. So seeing it through the lens of those existing neuro tools first.
Yeah.
And were they involved in the nuts and bolts early on?
Oh, yeah. He mentions in the interview that they were actually part of manufacturing the very first German-made TMS stimulator.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So his company and him personally, they had a hand in those foundational years, helping get TMS established in Germany. It sounds like a really practical, technical start in the field.
Okay, so he got his foot in the door through that technical manufacturing angle. But neurophysiology, like you said, EEG,
Yeah.
that's often about diagnosing things, right?
Primarily, yes.
The source mentions that TMS is different because it can also treat. What was it about that potential, the therapeutic side, that really hooked him, made him stick with TMS?
Yeah, that seems key. What really stands out is that shift in focus. He makes a point of contrasting it with neurophysiology, which, as you said, is mainly about diagnosis, figuring out what's wrong.
Right.
TMS offered this potential to actually do something about it, to, treat patients, maybe improve their quality of life.
Ah, okay. So it was the impact, the
Yeah.
chance to actually provide a solution, not just identify the problem. That was the pull.
That's exactly how it comes across. He seems genuinely driven by moving beyond just diagnosis to actually offering a therapy. That ability to make a tangible difference seems like a huge part of his why.
And his background. He's an electrical engineer, is that right?
Yes, that's right. By training, an electrical engineer originally from Austria. His early career was actually in telecommunications. Then he made the switch into neurostimulation and later moved into sales and marketing roles too.
Telecoms to medical devices. That's quite a leap.
It is, yeah. But he emphasizes how valuable that deep technical foundation is, being an engineer.
How so?
Well, he says it gives him a real fundamental grasp of how these complex machines actually work, the underlying mechanics. That engineering mindset, even with all the progress since, it's a big plus when you're developing hardware like Blossom TMS. Helps him see the possibilities, the limitations from the ground up.
So understanding the guts of the machine really shaped the kind of device he wanted to build. What was the specific issue he saw out there that made him think, right, we need to create the Blossom TMS?
The main driver, the core motivation for Blossom TMS, was really about accessibility, making TMS easier to use, easier to integrate into regular clinical settings.
Easier. In what way? What was hard about the existing ones?
Well, he felt that a lot of the devices out there, especially the earlier ones he'd worked with, were often designed with research priorities in mind.
Ah, okay. Academic use, maybe?
Kind of, yeah. So they might have complicated controls, a steep learning curve, maybe features that weren't strictly necessary for day-to-day clinical treatment.
Right. Overkill for a standard clinic.
Exactly. And the insight was that this complexity was actually a barrier. It was stopping wider adoption. So the goal with Blossom was something streamlined, intuitive, genuinely easy for clinicians to just pick up and use.
So simplicity wasn't just a nice to have, it was strategic, essential for growth.
Absolutely. That's actually why their slogan is, "We make TMS easy."
Okay, catchy.
Yeah, and he believes that simplifying that user experience is the key to making TMS a standard, go-to treatment option for more clinics and ultimately more patients.
We make TMS easy. Got it. So beyond just being easy to use and fitting that clinical workflow, what actually makes the Blossom TMS device technically different? I mean, there are other machines on the market.
Yeah, and this is where it gets pretty interesting, and it loops back to that engineering background we talked about.
Okay.
He points to the coil cooling system as a major differentiator.
Coil cooling. Why is that such a big deal technically?
Okay, so the coil, that's the part that actually delivers the magnetic pulse to the patient's head.
Right.
When you're using TMS a lot, like back-to-back sessions all day, especially at higher intensities, those coils generate a lot of heat.
I see. And heat's bad for performance.
Exactly. Heat affects performance, it can limit how long you can treat patients without a break, and it can even shorten the life of the coil itself. Now, most devices use air cooling.
Which I'm guessing isn't super efficient.
Pretty much. He argues air cooling just isn't as effective, especially if the clinic is in a warmer climate. It can lead to the coil overheating, which means you have to stop, let it cool down, disrupts the workflow.
Okay. So what did SEBERS do differently?
They partnered up with a Korean company called Remed, specifically to integrate a really robust coil cooling solution.
And what kind of cooling is it?
They use oil cooling.
Oil. Like in a car engine.
Sort of, conceptually, yeah. He really emphasizes that this oil cooling is key, both for keeping performance consistent and for making the coils last longer. He says it allows their machines to run literally all day, patient after patient, without overheating problems.
All day. No forced cool down breaks. And that sounds like a massive practical advantage for a busy practice.
It really is. He stresses that this oil system means the device is highly reliable, needs much less maintenance than air-cooled systems,
Right.
No filters getting clogged with dust, and it's just way more efficient for that kind of continuous clinical use. It's a fundamental tech choice that really enables that whole make TMS easy philosophy on the ground.
Okay, so technical robustness, reliability through that oil cooling.
Yeah.
That's a key piece. But you also mentioned accessibility earlier, and the interview hammers home affordability. How does the price of the Blossom TMS fit into their strategy?
Yeah, affordability isn't just like a side benefit. It's presented as a core principle.
Right.
I mean, if you want a technology to be widely adopted, cost is often a huge hurdle, isn't it?
For sure.
He makes the point that because SEBERS Medical is privately owned, they don't have the same kind of intense pressure from investors who are just focused on maximizing profit margins, not like, say, a publicly traded company or one backed by venture capital might have.
Okay, so being private gives them more freedom on pricing.
Exactly. They can focus on building a high-quality machine, but set what they see as a reasonable price. He's pretty blunt about it in the interview, actually. Says machines costing over $100,000, that's just not the future of TMS.
Wow, okay, so what is their price point for Blossom?
Around $50,000.
50,000 versus over 100,000. Yeah.
It's a big difference. And he clearly believes that price range fundamentally changes the whole accessibility game. It opens the door for way more clinics, maybe smaller practices, or ones in areas with tighter budgets to actually offer TMS therapy, which at the end of the day makes it available to many more patients. It feels like the insight is that disrupting the price is just as important as the tech innovation itself if you want real, broad impact.
So you combine the ease of use, the reliable tech like the oil cooling, and that disruptive price point. That's the core of the Blossom offering. Let's zoom out a bit then. What's Christian Hirschbeck's bigger vision? Where does he see TMS technology itself heading in the future?
Looking at the bigger picture, yeah, he sees TMS expanding quite significantly beyond its main use case today.
Which is mostly mental health, right? Primarily depression treatment.
So moving beyond psychiatry into other areas.
Definitely. Into neurology in a big way.
Neurology, like what?
He specifically calls out areas like stroke rehabilitation and also pain management. He sees huge untapped potential for TMS there. Stroke rehab and pain. Wow. That would be a transformative shift, taking it from, a somewhat niche mental health tool to something used for physical and neurological recovery.
It would be a massive expansion, wouldn't it? His vision is pretty ambitious, actually. He believes that down the line, TMS could become just a standard tool in hospitals all over the world, as common and accessible as, say, EEG and EMG devices are now.
Like just another piece of standard hospital equipment.
Exactly. And he notes that SEBERS Medical is already actively working on developing those neurology applications to try and help make that vision happen.
That's a really compelling picture. TMS machines sitting right alongside EEG in hospitals everywhere. Okay, so for clinics or doctors thinking about offering TMS, especially if they're new to it,
Yeah.
what are the usual roadblocks they hit? And how does SEBERS try to help them get past those?
He flags two main areas where new providers often need a hand: technical worries and the business side of things.
Technical concerns. That's about the machine itself,
Yeah.
keeping it running smoothly.
Right. And he says they address that partly by designing these low-maintenance machines, referencing that oil cooling again.
Mm.
But crucially, he also highlights that they don't do hidden fees or complicated pay-per-use charges.
Ah, that can be a nightmare for budgeting.
Exactly. He stresses that the cost is upfront, predictable, which is obviously key for any clinic trying to manage its finances.
Makes sense. Okay, so that's the tech side. What about the business operations?
Yeah, they offer quite extensive support there too. They recognize that running a TMS service is about more than just having the box.
Right, you need patience, you need to get paid.
Precisely. So this includes comprehensive training on using the device properly, guidance on navigating the admin stuff like how to code procedures correctly for insurance, understanding the reimbursement pathways. They even help with marketing, apparently, to help clinics actually reach the patients who might benefit.
So it's not just selling them the hardware and walking away. It's like a whole support package to make sure they can actually succeed with TMS.
That's the idea. The goal seems to be making that whole transition into offering TMS as smooth and, well, supported as possible. It really ties back into that make TMS easy idea, making the entire process easy, not just the button pushing.
Okay, so wrapping things up a bit, based on the interview, what's next for SEBERS Medical and Blossom TMS? What should we expect to see?
Well, he indicates a real commitment to ongoing innovation and improvement. They're actively working on those expanded clinical applications we mentioned, especially in neurology, pushing the boundaries of what TMS can treat.
But sticking to the core principles.
Exactly. He stresses that this innovation push will happen while staying true to those fundamentals, keeping it affordable and keeping it easy to use.
Sounds like steady evolution, guided by those core ideas.
Yeah, the commitment seems clear. Just making this powerful technology more accessible to more clinicians and ultimately to more patients around the world.
So let's pull this all together. What does it mean? We've taken a deep dive into Christian Hirschbeck's perspective. We've followed the journey, from neurophysiology into TMS. We've seen that key insight driving the Blossom device, this focus on making it genuinely accessible and simple to use.
Right. And that unique oil cooling system providing a real, tangible technical edge for busy clinics. Plus that strategic $50,000-ish price point aimed at breaking down those cost barriers.
Yeah, disrupting the market, really. And then there's that ambitious vision, TMS becoming standard hospital gear, moving strongly into neurology alongside mental health.
It seems pretty clear that the driving force isn't just building a technically better mousetrap, so to speak. It's about fundamentally democratizing the therapy, removing those hurdles of complexity and cost to just expand its reach dramatically, both in who can offer it and what conditions it can actually help treat.
This brings up a really interesting question to ponder. If TMS treatment, which right now often feels pretty specialized, maybe even expensive, if it were to become as common, as accessible in hospitals as something like an EEG or an EMG machine, how might that truly change the whole landscape of neurological and psychiatric care across the globe? What new possibilities really open up when a powerful therapy becomes both easy to use and affordable? Definitely something to think about as you go about your day.